Now, we shall discuss about the third interwar transformation. How did the war economy changed? How did the economy got increased? And later on, how did the economy fell down? So first we shall try to understand what are the factors that gave the rapid growth for the economy under the heading of wartime transformations. Wartime transformations name itself reveals for us that during the wartime there was a huge transformation of the currencies. So as initial stages of the war, there are two groups, Allied group, the Axis group, which were ready to fight the war. So Germany, Austria and Hungary as one group, the Axis group, the Allied group, Britain, US which joined later, and Russia which went off in the middle. So like this, two groups joined together and fought the war. In the initial years, like when it was started in the month of June and August. So they thought the war would last for maximum for 3 or 4 months, and then war would be ended by the coming Christmas, means December. Because Christmas is something which is considered as a very holy festival and a very large festival in the Western nations. But they never expected that it is going to be for nearly 4 years, and the world has witnessed the drastic and the catastrophic war. So the First World War gave a chance for the people to find some new jobs which they have never ever thought of. The army started to grow in larger and larger size, because the armies are to be recruited with a more number of soldiers because of the long time expansion of the war, and then we need to buy more number of weapons, so which gave a rise for the weapon industries around the countries in the world. And then we have a possibility of passing the people from one region to another region. Transportation facilities have to be increased, and then the people, in order to attack each other, they need to have more and more strength to maintain the stability, and more amount of money is being spent on the war weapons. So finally the huge investment on the war weapons made the countries to keep more than half of their wealth in that, and during this time only the Britishers were able to take more amount of debt from the US citizens as well as from the US government very liberally. So this process of the First World War, where the transformation has got changed from a place where there was no bread to the people to a situation where the people were getting handful of works. They need more amount of cotton, the uniform cloths for the soldiers, production of rice in order to feed the soldiers not only in their own country but also in the abroad countries wherever they are fighting the wars. And then they also need more amount of weapons, they also need more number of soldiers. So the demand and the living standard of the people started to grow day by day, and the country started to spend more economy to buy the war equipments, war weapons, and start to invest more in the war items. So like this, the situation got transformed, which increased the investments in millions of rupees. This was really a very great change which has occurred during the transformation. So in the first stage of understanding the interwar economy, the wartime transformation gives us a clear picture that because of the World War I, the situations have changed drastically. Because of the change of the situations drastically, the movement went on to a very crucial stage. So now, whenever they need anything that like soldiers, like food, or to buy the war equipment, they need to invest huge amount. So the huge amount because of the war was spent on the roads. Millions of rupees were laid down waste on the roads, because the investment what we do for war is nothing but a unreturned income. So it's not a profitable business according to the businessmen people who say that war investments are waste investments. Somehow many of the historians also come to the same opinion, because the money which is spent for fighting war, or to recruit the personnel for war, or to buy weapons during the wartime is something where you need not get back anything at any point of time. Now, after the wartime transformation happened, Britishers came to a situation, yes, though Britishers were victorious, the situation is Britishers are in a huge debt to the US citizens as well as for the US government, because the Britain people, whenever they need money, they used to take it very liberally from the US citizens as well as from the US government also. So these all things made US to come down economically, and it could not further hold and give a very strong fight to the other countries in the world who are expanding, and industrialization started to grow during that point of time. The second major aspect after the war, what was the situation of the Britain? As I told you just now, Britishers started to take money liberally from the US citizens as well as from the US government. So that made US to come down drastically in economically. Though Britain was victorious in the war, but the situations turned very drastically and could not find the possible alternative of getting the fruits of the victory, because they have spent huge money at various corners of the world which is not going to be returned back, but the debts remained clearly in the name of the Great Britain. So finally, the situation is that Britishers, though they were victorious, they were part of the victory team. They were able to defeat Germany and Austrian team, but literally they are in the severe economic debts to the US people. And after the war, when the war boom came less, contracted, when it was reaching to its lower levels, because once war has been stopped, there is no need to produce any war weapons further, and no country will be willing to buy those things. So this made the country to still come down further, because most of the people, those who are working in any of the industries related to war, has come down. So this also increased in 1921. Out of every 5 persons, 1 person lost the job. 1 person was thrown out of the job because there was a war boom contrast. So this also affected the economy of the Great Britain. But during this time only, the Japanese people industries started to grow further. And some of the industries have come up in China also. So with the growth of economy in Japan, in China, and in some of the parts of India, Indian national movement also came to be a very strong agitation movement. So these all also gave impact on the growth of Great Britain. While Great Britain is severely suffering from the economic debts of the US people, and also scarcity of the jobs, unemployment situation, where people are completely dissatisfied with the existing systems. So now these all added for the post-war period for the Great Britain. Yes, initially they were very happy when the war was happening, economy was supported for them, they got huge funds from their friends from the US and the government of the US also. But as the time passed on, when they need to repay back, literally Great Britain started to fall down, and most of the wealth what it has taken as loan has been invested in the war economy, where they were not able to get any kind of extra benefits from that. So finally, lot of money, means millions of money, was invested on the roads, where they were not getting any kind of returns back for that. But the debts have to be cleared finally to the US people. And in the same time, when US is giving loans like this, the other in the east, Japan started to rise up very fast. Industrialization started rapidly there. Their growth reached to very high level. Their economy became stable. Their soldier strength increased, and they became very fast rising country in the east, then in India, then in China. So all these movements also added for the conditions to become crucial and difficult for the Great Britain people as well as the Great Britain to manage the colonial powers as well as the home situations. Then when we move on to the rise of mass production, when the mass production has to be raised, the concept of mass production was first initially involved in US. It was the company called Ford which has brought the mass production aspect to a very peak of its extent. How did these people get the idea of doing mass production? What is the necessity of doing mass production? The problem is here. As the economy has come down not only in Britain but also in US, because of the war, the impact has also been felt in US, but the fastest recovered country was United States. Because when these people started to realize that we are not able to get any money back, they started to invest their monies in the other industries, rather than in the war industries. Now, the money which has been lended were been asked back, so they were started to get back their money, and this made the forced situations difficult for UK people, but it is a positive trend for the US people. So US people started to do investments. Slow, rapid industrialization was started. This industrialization process was very slow and not very impressive during that time. But looking at the conveyor belt method of bringing the newspaper down or doing the milk packets packing, all these things observed by Ford company in charge, he realized that with the mass production, we can make the same work done by the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt will repeat the same work which has to be done by it. So automatically the production will increase because the mass production will bring more further benefits for them. And also during that time, he also made it very clear that in front of every conveyor belt, we should have a manual labor standing. So when a manual labor is standing in front of a conveyor belt and making it to work, he does not dare to leave this one and go and chit chat with his friends, or even if he takes a break also, he will take it for a very short time. This is how the initial idea of mass production was started. He started the industry, and in that production, he increased the production. With this, he made the industrial workers to work for a very long time and started to earn more and more profits. With this, more number of the industrial workers started and decided to resign to their jobs because they were not able to cope up with the necessity of the work, and it becomes very difficult for them to inculcate them with the technology which is very new for them. But during that time, Ford for the first time has doubled the daily wage for them, and this doubling of the wage attracted the employees again back, and then company started to gain 3 times, 4 times further. This added for this, and it proved very successful for the efforts made by the Ford management, and he dared enough to say that the best way of cutting down the tax or cutting down of his income or expenditures was to increase the wages of the employees. Generally, we feel increasing the wage of the employees is a burden for the company, but for the first time in the history where the production has been increased and also the cost of income was also very high for the company, that's how he made a statement that the best way to cut down the expenditure is to increase the wages of the employees. This made a great change in the mass production. This mass production started to spread not only in US, from US it started to spread to various corners of US, from then it started to move to the other countries of Europe. So as the situation started to turn towards the positive side, so from 1921-22 the industrial production started to reach to its peak, and further it started to going on further. But during that time only, there is something that happened to bring the entire countries to trouble. When initially the loan which was given by the US citizens, they decided to take back their loan amounts. The Britishers, the other countries, whoever has taken the loan, they are forced to pay back the loans. But when they were forced to pay back the loans where they are not having money, the economy has been started to tremble for that particular countries. And it's not only that, the impact was not only on the countries who took loan from US, it is also on the countries like US also. So that is nothing but the Great Economic Depression took place in the year 1929. So the Great Economic Depression, why do we call this one as a Great Economic Depression, is the impact of the Great Economic Depression was felt in each and every corner of the world. As we discussed till now, the mass production concept has given a boom for the US economy, and the recovery of US economy has also added a boom for the European economy to recover. But finally, in 1929, when the economic depression hit the world, the first major thing what US did was, the US people started to ask back their loans. Initially, it was very free for the countries to get loan from US, and it is around 1927-28 period, the amount of money given as loan was more than 1 billion. But in the very next year, it came down to just 1/4 of the amount. So it shows all the countries which are associated with the trade and with the investments of the US, were drastically coming down. And in order to support their own country's stability, they started to increase the export duties and all and import duty charges. This also made the other countries the situation more worst. And along with this, they also were started to ask them to repay back the loans. And in competition with the dollar, the British pound sterlings also started to fall down literally. And not only this, all the countries, whichever country is associated with the financial assistance of the US, was trying to face a lot of difficulties because of the situation. So all these things added and improved the situation, more difficulties for the people during that period. The economic depression has reduced the employment opportunities, and the banks started to ask to repay back all the loans in order to save the situation from great economic depression. So the impact was not only felt in Europe. As the money was being removed from the US hands, the money started to get back to the US countries, but not literally in US also. In US also, many companies were being shut down. Many banks are being closed. So when we talk about the impact of US, especially because of the great economic depression, US was also not left out. US also got its impact. US also was facing a lot of problems. Nearly 4,000 banks in US were declared as bankrupts. They could not return the money back to the investors. So 4,000 banks were shut down, and nearly 110,000 companies were closed because of unable to pay back the loans and unable to pay the salaries to the employees. So this was a situation around some 1933, 1934. But by 1935, the situations turned little bit positive sign, and the economy started to improve in a good sign, where the countries again started to focus on the development and the industrial growth. Now let us discuss what is the impact of great economic depression on the Indian land.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.